What is church?
Is it a building?
With some pews,
A piano?
and stained glass?
Or is it something more?
2,000 years ago, the church was born.
It wasn't made up of the famous, the rich, or the powerful.
It was made up of everyday people who passionately believed in the message of Jesus.
It was the beginning of a revolution of love and freedom that would change the world forever.
Today, the church is stronger than ever.
And continues to impact every corner of the world.
Over 300,000 churches in America.
And almost 5 million churches around the world stand ready to be instruments of change.
The ripple of Jesus' impact can be clearly seen and felt in the church today.
And it's made up of people like me and you.
Today, you didn't just come to a building.
You came to a revolution 2,000 years in the making.
The world is facing as much trouble as ever.
But we are not afraid.
We will continue to do what we've always done.
Proclaim the message of Jesus.
To help a world that needs him so desperately.
Welcome.
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 Welcome to church.
Today, it's especially important to note that the church is made up of people like you and me. So for a number of weeks, we have been focusing on the theme, what does it mean to be church? We've talked about what it means to be church within our own lives. We've talked about what it means to be church in the world and to speak a word of justice and challenge and unconditional love to a world that would rather not hear those kinds of messages. Today, as we think about what it means to be church, and as we heard in the video, the church is made up of people like you and me. And so today we explore what that's all about, to be church. Today is All Saints Sunday. If you have been a part of a Lutheran church or another Protestant denomination or a Roman Catholic church or an Orthodox church, you might know about today and why it matters so much and why it matches beautifully with our theme of what it means to be church. All Saints Day is officially November 1st. Today, obviously, November 3rd. At Epiphany and other churches, we celebrate All Saints Sunday on the Sunday closest to November 1st. And so today is All Saints Sunday. The 11th chapter of the letter to the Hebrews, which we aren't reading at this service, we read it the earlier two, but the message is that there are all of these people, and there is a cadence over and over and over. The writer of the letter to the Hebrews has this phrase, has this sort of cadence in chapter 11, by faith, by faith, by faith. All of these people by faith, by faith. And so sometimes the 11th chapter of Hebrews is called the Hall of Faith. All of these faithful people. We know that the Hall of Faith is not limited to that list of names in the 11th chapter of Hebrews. Indeed, it isn't. We know that the Hall of Faith includes other people, people that we know, people that have been significant parts of our lives. The Hall of Faith. Then we go on to chapter 12 of the letter to the Hebrews. And the writer of the letter talks about the idea that we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. We are surrounded by people of faith, followers of Jesus, who have died, who have gone on to their heavenly reward, and who now surround us. Think of the people in your lives who make up that great cloud of witnesses, that cloud of witnesses that even today inspire you, that cloud of witnesses that encourage you from their heavenly perch with a word of encouragement, with a word of love, with a word of hope. And so in chapter 12 we read this: "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith." There is a member of our congregation who is even now running the New York City Marathon. 26 miles, 385 yards is exactly what it is. He's never run a marathon before. I have no idea if he'll finish. He has no idea if he will finish. But a marathon is really the metaphor for life. We live a life that is sometimes long and painful and difficult. And so we look to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, to keep us going on this marathon, to keep us going when we feel like we just want to lay down and quit, to keep us going over the long marathon of the journey of life. We look to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, and we know that we are being cheered on by the Hall of Faith. We know that we are being cheered on by this great cloud of witnesses. Are you thinking of some people now? Are you giving thanks to God for some members of your cloud of witnesses? That's what today is all about. Our congregation has been here since 1961. And this congregation started out with a group of people who wanted to reveal God through revolutionary relationships. There was nothing here, and this group of people came. The Hall of Faith, the cloud of witnesses, without whom we would not be here today. So we have the Epiphany Hall of Faith, the Epiphany cloud of witnesses. It was a revolutionary move to come here and to take a shovel and to turn a spade of soil. This is a picture that you can barely see, and I wanted to put it up there as a way of saying that the longer we go, the more people who have been important in our lives can fade away, even though we understand how important they are. Here are the names of some of the saints, the Hall of Faith, the cloud of witnesses. Most of us won't know any of them, and yet they are the reason that we are here. Jean Chevalier, Robert Cranner, Marvin Durbin, Harry Myers, Richard Blaine, Jack Kuhn, Harold Merle, Harold Poth, Joseph Wysand, Kenny Patrick, John Ricketts, Wayne Smith, Pastor Roy Godfrey. You probably don't know any of these people, but it's because of them and their faith that we are here. They are the great cloud of witnesses. They took a shovel and turned a spade of dirt over here, and I don't know, maybe someday we'll take a shovel and turn a spade of dirt over there. I guess we'll see. Martin Luther had this great insight about human nature. What he said is that we are simultaneously saint and sinner. So God makes us a saint as we are welcomed into the family of faith in baptism, but we are a sinner because we're still human. We're a sinner because our imperfections don't go away. We are sinners because we can't escape necessarily where we are, and we need God to pull us out. So you are saints, I am a saint. You are sinners, I am a sinner. And that's kind of how we are as human beings. It's kind of how we experience life. There are preachers who tell us that the goal of the Christian faith is to reach perfection, and that when we reach perfection, we will get everything we need, everything we want. Problem with this false teaching is that if we don't get to that place of perfection, we can blame ourselves. We don't have enough faith. We're not doing enough good works. And so we're told to pursue perfection, and we can end up being completely discouraged because we know we don't get there. Instead of trying to pursue perfection, we as God's saints and sinners know that it is all about being forgiven. Saints know how much they need to be forgiven. Saints know how many times they have betrayed relationships. Saints know how many times they have gotten it wrong. Saints know how many times they have missed the mark. And saints understand that it's all about Jesus' forgiveness. Not about being perfect, but about hanging on to this incredible gift which comes to us through Jesus' death and resurrection. It's not about being perfect, saints. It's about knowing that we are forgiven and that we need to be forgiven. The story from Luke that I shared this morning is pretty interesting. It's a dinner party at the home of Simon the Pharisee. And Jesus shows up, and this woman shows up who was uninvited. And so she is there, and she kneels in front of Jesus, and she anoints his feet. Some people think that it is a precursor of anointing his body when he dies, before he raises again. But it is an act of worship, an act of hospitality, an act of gratitude for who Jesus is as the one who forgives sins. Enter Simon. Simon is grumbling to himself. You know, if this guy was a prophet, he would know who this is. He would know how compromised her character is. He would know some of the things that she's done, but apparently he doesn't. Jesus understood that Simon was mumbling under his breath, and so he said, "Simon, I've got something to tell you." Simon said, "Okay." Jesus said there was a creditor, and there were two people who owed this creditor a number of denarii. One owed 500, the other owed 50. The creditor decided to forgive the debts of both. And so Jesus said to Simon, "Which of these two do you suppose would be more grateful for what had happened?" Simon said, "Well, of course, the one who had been forgiven the 500 denarii, certainly more than the 50. Jesus said, "Simon, you've spoken wisely. You understand what this is all about." And so Jesus used the story of the debtor, the collectors, all of that situation as a way of saying that if somebody who understands they are forgiven will love the most, somebody who understands they are forgiven will understand what an incredible gift they've been given, and their lives will be changed, and they will go out and they will share that. Bob Goff, wonderful writer, says this: "We can confront people with their failures or surround them with our love." We can confront people with their failures or surround them with our love. How does this go down for you? Who said that? Why is that? Absolutely. That's honest. We can confront people with their failures. The alternative is to surround them with our love. And that's what we would like to do, I think. Where do you find yourself as you relate to people around you? Are you confronting with failures or surrounding with your love? Bob Goff reminds us either way will be remembered. So how do you want to be remembered? How do you want to be remembered in the way that you respond to people? How do you want to be remembered? With love. There is no failure in love. Beautiful. So how will this woman who has been forgiven the greatest remember Jesus? How will she remember what Jesus has done for her? How will she respond to the gift that sets her free?
The setting was perfect. Jesus had come to Simon's house for a meal. He wanted to judge on merit alone if the self-acclaimed prophet was real. Then without a warning, a woman appeared, was an open disgrace to the town. Simon waited for Jesus' rebuke, but watched her without a sound. She stood there embraced by emotion, as her tears softly fell on his feet. She knelt down to dry them off with her hair, and she noticed the dust of the street. As she washed it away with her finest perfume, she just trembled to be so close. For the one who's forgiven the greatest loves the most. Simon, my friend, Jesus spoke up. There's a story I think you should know. 2 men were debtors, the one owed much more, but neither could pay what they owed. Both debts were canceled, and who do you think was the more grateful man of the 2? I suppose the one with the most to pay. These words Jesus smiled are true. She stood there embraced by emotion, as her tears softly fell on his feet. She knelt down to dry them off with her hair, and she noticed the dust of the street. As she washed it away with her finest perfume, she just trembled to be so close. For the one who's forgiven the greatest loves the most. Looking at Simon, he asked him, do you struggle with what you've been shown? What kept you from giving me honor when you asked me into your home? Could it be you're deceived by your goodness, so unaware of your need? Unlike this woman before you, whose sins are forgiven indeed, whose sins are forgiven indeed. She stood there embraced by emotion, as her tears softly fell on his feet. She knelt down to dry them off with her hair, and she noticed the dust of the street. As she washed it away with her finest perfume, she just trembled to be so close. The one who's forgiven the greatest loves the most. The one who's forgiven the greatest